Good Thursday morning, everybody out there. Meteorologist Zach Fridelli here with you. And, you know, overnight we saw some big changes. And I sort of said that yesterday, that something is going to give. Either the European, which has always been in the Florida Panhandle, is going to shift, or the GFS is going to shift. Well, it was the European overnight last night that had shifted and now basically takes the storm right into the New Orleans area, right into Southeast Louisiana, someplace, say, between Grand Isle and the Boothville, say, mouth of the river area. Can these still shift? Yes, but right now, the big thing is we only have about 3 days to prepare. And now that we're getting a consensus amongst the models, we need to be talking about who needs to prepare for what in regards to the storm. And it's not all bad news. Just because the models shifted to us, one thing, they can shift a little bit more east, which they can't make a big jump like they made last night, but if they shift just a little bit eastward, we're talking about very little impacts on the west side of the storm. So if you can get the storm east of your, say, location, you probably won't see major impacts. But right now, everything that I'm seeing is pointing towards a storm making a landfall in Southeast Louisiana sometime Saturday night into Sunday. How strong it is, we struggle with that. That is the hardest thing to predict, especially when we have land interaction, which we do right now. And you can clearly see that with the latest infrared satellite. The storm is about to make landfall somewhere along the Nicaraguan coastline. All of the convection's out here over the open waters, and it's going to remain that way. And we're not expecting this probably to become Nate anytime soon. It's going to be over land most of today, and then tonight is when it gets into the Northwest Caribbean. This area is going to be key. I think late tonight into tomorrow, Friday, is going to be key to determine what happens farther north into the Gulf. If this thing starts to really ramp up over the Northwest Caribbean, then we're going to have some problems, I think, if we're along the northern Gulf Coast. Because the stronger it gets here means, yeah, it might get knocked down a little bit over the Yucatan, but once it gets into the Gulf, the more formidable it is at that point, the more we have to worry about a stronger system. The models have backed down on the intensity. Some, yesterday were saying, hey, this could be Cat 2, maybe even Cat 3. They've come down to more like a strong tropical storm to a weak hurricane. What does that mean? Well, if they're predicting that, we always say prepare for a category worse. So in this case, I'm thinking in my head, Louisiana residents, Mississippi, Alabama, even all the way to the Florida Panhandle, the Pensacola area, you need to start preparations for maybe a Category 1 to Category 2 storm. And that's what the National Hurricane Center is predicting right now. But first, I'm going to throw up the models because I think everybody wants to see this first before I show you the official track. These are the latest models, and you see a very good consensus now. We're not talking about some going over here and some going over here. We've sort of drawn the line where it's from, Pensacola to, say, South Central Louisiana, Vermilion Bay. Some of these on the left side of the track, farther west, closer to Southwest Louisiana, you can kind of ignore them. They're not really good models. But this dark red line right here, I'm drawing my little black cursor right next to it. That is the official track from the National Hurricane Center as of earlier this morning. Expect the 10 a.m. advisory. That's when we get our next track. It's going to shift more westward, okay? So because they're still on the right side. Notice all the models are over here, and they're still on that right side of the guidance. They're going to probably shift right into the heart of the guidance, taking a landfall into Southeast Louisiana, coming up sometime Saturday night into Sunday. That is when we're looking for a possible landfall. Here's the latest track from the Hurricane Center, and I just showed you the red line because that is the track, but this is a different look at it. And we already have, the hurricane point right here. This is 2 a.m. Sunday, so we're going to start to see impacts Saturday night in the Southeast Louisiana and then really ramp up during the overnight hours. But again, I think this little position here is going to shift a little bit west with the new update at 10 a.m. And that means it's probably going to bring a landfall right into Southeast Louisiana. Something like that is probably what they're going to do with the track as we get later on this morning with the latest update. Another thing I want to point out to you this morning is this is the latest arrival of tropical storm force winds. So how much time do we have to prepare for a possible impact of a hurricane? Well, Saturday morning at 8 a.m. This is only 2 days away, okay? 2 days away. We're already getting close to those tropical storm force winds approaching our coastline. By Saturday afternoon, they're on our coastline. And then if you're thinking about Mississippi Gulf Coast, Alabama Gulf Coast, New Orleans Metro, you're probably talking sometime late Saturday afternoon. That's when those winds will start to pick up the tropical storm force. And then Saturday night into Sunday is when we'll expect a landfall. Now, the timing can change. That's one thing that we do need to monitor closely is the timing of this thing can still change, and the intensity forecast is going to be difficult because we have so much land interaction in the short term. We don't really know. And, to point out, the GFS has been right with the track of the storm, but the GFS is not very strong with it in Louisiana. It's barely, a tropical storm when it hits Louisiana this weekend. So could it be right totally with the track and also the intensity? Definitely. But one thing this year is the models have all underestimated the strength of every storm. So, Irma, all of those storms, they all were, Harvey. Look at Harvey, how, Harvey just blew up right at the coastline. Do I expect that to happen? We are in October. We got to remind ourselves that as forecasters. We are in October, and once you get up here, let me try and get this a little bit more north. Once you get up here into the Gulf, in the month of October, it's not as favorable. The waters are a little bit cooler across the northern Gulf up here, and you're gonna get a little bit of wind shear just because it is October. So that's all things, that signs that point to this thing is not going to become a Katrina. It's not going to blow up into a major hurricane. We hope. Things can change, but right now nothing leads me to believe it's going to become a strong hurricane. But right now I would say everybody in Southeast Louisiana, coastal Mississippi, coastal Alabama, to about Pensacola, all of those residents should be preparing for a Category 1 hurricane possibly impacting them this weekend. What does that mean? Well, you probably need to head to the store as soon as possible. You should already have that, hurricane kit ready, but we're talking about just fill up with gas because we could be dealing with power outages. Make sure you go get those non-perishable food items to give you a few days. Water. Do it now, because once this word gets out, which it's going to get out probably at the 10 a.m. advisory when it shifts really over Southeast Louisiana, that's when the word's going to quickly spread that, hey, we have a hurricane coming in 2 to 3 days. And that's when sort of, I shouldn't say panic, because nobody should panic in this regard, but that's what happens. Everybody runs to the store, and then you deal with chaos at that point. So I would say fill up that car first thing this morning on the way to work, and then try to get to the store as soon as possible to get those, essentials for the possibility of power outages. This is not going to be an evacuation storm. We really don't have the time at this point, except if you're outside of the hurricane protection levee system. That is some locations that could see some evacuations, because obviously right now we're already getting onshore winds that are pushing the water up. And so we can't really take any more water. When the storm does get closer, the winds are going to pick up. That's going to push more water in. So if you're outside of the hurricane protection levee system in Southeast Louisiana, you most likely will probably have to deal with some type of evacuation. Again, that's specific to areas, but again, this is not a mass evacuation storm. This is not that big. But it's one storm that we're going to have to prepare for. Something, if I had to throw it out there, I hate comparing storms, but something like Isaac, where it was really, it was a rough night of weather, and it was a rough day of weather, and it was a rough few days of weather with Isaac, a lot of power outages. But as far as mass wind damage, we're not expecting that with the storm. But again, you need to get your preparations going. If you're in Southeast Louisiana, to portions eastward to Pensacola, preparing for a Category 1 hurricane approaching this weekend. If you're a little bit west, like Baton Rouge, I'm feeling like if it stays to your east, you're probably going to see very little. I mean, this is on the west side of the storm. If the storm goes to your east, which it can still do, it can still miss Louisiana, it can still miss New Orleans, more so to the east. That happens, the impacts are going to be a lot smaller. But right now, everything points to a track probably right across Southeast Louisiana, right across the mouth of the river, say from the mouth of the river to New Orleans, somewhere in that vicinity. That's where we probably will see the center of the storm. How strong? We're just going to have to wait and see with that. But right now, Category 1 preparations kind of need to begin across Southeast Louisiana and coastal Mississippi, Alabama, and the Florida Panhandle. I'm meteorologist Zach Friedel. Hopefully this kind of gets you aware of the latest information overnight last night. I'll have more updates throughout the day.